on that they're gonna be able to see my the flash. Is it better?
Mm-hmm. All right, so you want to come up?
More my single niggas. More my single niggas. Right here.
Mm-hmm.
You need to hold on to this in my back. No.
Mm.
You need to hold on to this in my back.
No.
I'm just saying that.
Back a little bit.
That's what you're supposed to say, though. And it's getting hot in here.
Right. So let's hurry up and get this together.
Don't fuck with her. Come hang with me, yo niggas. All my single niggas. All my single niggas.
You burnt out, man.
He said, the bitch came over my house and started ripping down my blinds, talking about something. Now what? Now what? Now what? He said, now the whole block gonna see me whoop your ass. I'ma put them back up. I gotta watch that.
Ready?
And that Cat Williams.
Ready, set.
Right here?
Yep. Action. Hold up.
Is it right?
No, it's not.
Oh, me?
No, yeah, start it.
That was all down here, that's fine. What about my face?
You good?
I think that is how I'm gonna do.
Ready?
Today's date is July 15, 2017. I am your host, Miss Mignetta Bailey, and you are now tuned in to N2IT Entertainment. Check this out. Jay-Z just released his album, 444, last week or sometime. Have y'all had enough time to check that out? If not, make sure you do. With, what's that? I can't.
Ready?
Jay-Z just released his album, 444. Have you had enough time to check that out? Album sales are grossing already in the millions, and it just came out last week. With the album just not coming out, he's already announcing dates, times, as well as cities of the upcoming tour. Jay-Z just released his album, 444. Have you had enough time to check that out yet? With the album just being released last week, it's already grossing in the millions of sales. With the sales going up, he's already...
Stop it. And you gotta you bouncing too wide. You can rock a little bit, but not too wide because you're getting out the shot. Ready, set.
Jay-Z just released this album, 444. And album sales are already grossing in the millions. And it was just released last week. Have you had enough time to check it out? With the album sales going in the millions, he's already acknowledged that he's going on tour. He's already releasing dates, times, as well as...
Once you mess up, just do it over.
Just do it over?
Yeah. Ready?
Jay-Z just released his album, 444. Have you had enough time to check that out? Album sales are already grossing in the millions. And it was just released last week. With the album sales doing so magnificent, he's already announcing dates, times, as well as cities of his upcoming tour, 444. With Detroit being one of the stops. Coming this November. Check that out. Do it over.
Yeah, because it was really choppy. Really choppy. We professionals over here.
We hot. Turn the fucking fan on.
Ready, set.
Can I open the door?
No.
No.
Ready, set.
Jay-Z just released his album 444, and album sales are already grossing in the millions, and it was just released last week. With the album sales doing so awesomely, he's already announced that he's going on tour. What you think is going to be called? Of course, 444 tour. He's already announcing dates, times, as well as cities for the upcoming launch. Detroit being one of the stops.
He's kind of stumbled.
Yeah.
I got a sponsor too. Just said they want to sponsor me for us.
Look, I got the man. I'm just a fan.
Ready?
Jay-Z just released his album 444, and album sales are already grossing in the millions. It was just released last week. With the album sales doing so awesomely, he's already announced that he's going on tour, which is entitled 444, with dates.
Yeah, I'm headed. Just relax, baby. Just relax. Okay. Just relax.
It's not about relaxing. I'm hot.
Ready? Set.
Jay-Z just released his album 444, with album sales grossing already in the millions.
Ready?
Jay-Z just released his album 444, and album sales are already in the millions. And it was just released last week. Have you had enough time to check that out? With album sales doing so awesomely, he's already announced that he's going on tour, releasing dates, times, as well as cities that he's going to take the tour to. What you think the tour is going to be called? Of course, 444, with Detroit being one of them stops. So make sure you cop your tickets now because he's due to be here in November. Check that out.
Perfect. Okay. All right, so next.
You want to do Planet of the Apes or you want to do the fight?
Let's do Planet of the Apes, then we'll fight. Oh, no. Let's do the fight
Rise
first.
of the Apes, Dawn of the Apes, War of the Apes.
We'll do that first.
I'm just trying to remember the three.
Ready? Set.
So if you haven't heard, Planet of the Apes is taking over. This is the third. So if you haven't heard or noticed, Planet of the Apes is taking over. This is the third installment, right?
Yep, but let's do that again. Ready?
This is the trilogy. Should I say third, or this is the trilogy to Rise of the Apes? How do they say it?
Ready?
This is the follow-up. Let's do the follow-up. Okay. To the first two movies.
This is the latest. You know what I'm saying?
I'm gonna say this is the follow-up.
Okay.
To the last two movies, Rise of the Apes, Dawn of the Apes. And this is called War of the Planet of the Apes.
Ready? And then you just give a brief bio about it. Ready, set.
If you haven't heard or noticed, Planet of the Apes is taking over. This is the... What was I supposed to say? The follow-up.
Okay, so
Come
check
on.
this out.
This is the follow-up. I got it.
And also, I want you to implement that sources say that this movie is kind of sort of like black people. You know what I'm saying?
Okay.
You know what I'm saying? Like, sources say this movie is portrayed to be sort of like black people with all the events that's taking place in the movie.
Because they take them from their land, put them in an unknown land, keep them as prisoners, and da 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 da. You check that out.
But if it's for you to decide, so you go check that out. You know what I'm saying? Ready,
Whoa.
set. Right. We gotta go deep with it. It can't just be a bullshit. Ready, set.
If you haven't noticed or paid attention lately, Planet of the Apes is taking over. This is the follow-up to
Cut.
Come over here.
Yeah, because you keep moving.
Okay.
Move over left.
Right here.
Shift. Right there. Ready, set.
If you haven't paid attention lately, if you haven't noticed or paid attention lately, Planet of the Apes is taking over. This is the follow-up to the first two movies, Dawn of the Apes. Oh, it's Rise. Rise, then dawn, then war.
Ready?
If you haven't paid attention or noticed lately, Planet of the Apes is taking over. This is the follow-up to the first two movies, Rise of the Apes, Dawn of the Apes, and this movie is titled War of the Planet of the Apes. Sources say that the movie is some like the history of black people. I'm not quite sure. They say they basically take the apes from their land and put them in prison, torture them, as well as enslave them to build the land for humans. So, I mean, it's up to you for you to decide what you think about the movie. But you make sure you go check that out. You want to do that over?
Yeah, the comments trying to. Then I was kind of misunderstanding at the end. What you said?
If you haven't paid attention or noticed lately, the Planet of the Apes is taking over. This is a follow-up. The new movie.
The movie Planet of the Apes.
The new movie.
Ready, set?
If you haven't paid attention or noticed lately, the Planet of the Apes is taking over. The new movie that was just released Friday is the third installment from the first two. Let's throw that up there. It's hot. Okay, I'm gonna stop moving because maybe I'm making myself hot. If you haven't paid attention or noticed lately, the Planet of the Apes is taking over. Is or are. Planet of the Apes are taking over. Planet of the Apes are taking over. Sources say that the movie reminds them of the history of black people, African Americans. We're going to say African Americans.
Right.
If you haven't paid attention or noticed lately, the Planet of the If you haven't paid attention or noticed lately, the Planet of the Apes are taking over. The movie.
The movie.
The movie.
The movie, The Planet of the Apes.
Okay.
Ready, set?
If you haven't paid attention or noticed lately, the Planet of the Apes
Nope.
movie. The movie.
The movie Planet
Okay.
of the Apes.
Right.
Ready, set?
If you haven't paid attention or noticed lately, the movie, The Planet of the Apes, is taking over. The movie released yesterday, Friday, is the third installment to the first two movies, The Rise of the Apes, The Dawn of the Apes, and yesterday's title is called...
Ready?
Yeah. If you haven't paid attention or noticed lately, the movie, The Planet of the Apes, is taking over. It was just released yesterday, the third installment to the first two, The Rise of the Apes, The Dawn of the Apes, and yesterday's title is called The War of the Planet of the Apes. Sources say that the movie basically reminds them of the history of African Americans, which we were taken from our city, taken from our country. I got this. It's gonna take me a couple times, but I got it.
Ready?
Am I good? If you haven't paid attention or noticed lately, the movie, The Planet of the Apes, is taking over. The third installment to the first two movies was just released yesterday, Friday. The first two, The Rise of the Apes, The Dawn of the Apes. If you haven't paid attention or noticed lately, the movie, The Planet of the Apes, is taking over. The third installment of the movie was just released yesterday, following up the first two, The Rise of the Apes, The Dawn of the Apes, and yesterday.
Ready?
If you haven't paid attention or noticed lately, the movie, The Dawn... If you haven't paid attention or noticed lately, the movie, The Planet of the Apes, is taking over. The third installment to the follow-up of the first two was just released yesterday. The Dawn...
Ready?
Okay, I'm ready. If you haven't paid attention or noticed lately, the movie, The Planet of the Apes, is taking over. The third installment to the follow-up of the first two was just released yesterday. The first two, The Rise of the Apes, The Dawn of the Apes, and yesterday the title was called The War of the Planet of the Apes. Sources say that the
You overthinking. You overthinking now. When you started doing that, you started going crazy. So, ready?
if you haven't paid attention or noticed lately, the movie The Planet of the Apes is taking over. The third installment was just released yesterday to follow up the first two, The Rise of the Apes, The Dawn of the Apes, and yesterday the title was called The War of the Planet of the Apes. Sources say that the movie reminds them of the history of African Americans, where the Africans were taken from their country, enslaved,